Hey everybody, how's it going? Another Thursday night roundtable discussion tonight. We've got with us Gary from Physical Format Rock and Roll, and 2 weeks in a row. I'm so happy that we've got Josh, our second consecutive week. So welcome, JC. How's it going?
It's going awesome. Love being here. Love Pink Floyd.
Good. Well, we are here to talk about Pink Floyd. We're going to talk about our top 10 Pink Floyd songs. And I can't believe we've been doing this for a little over a year now. We've never done a Pink Floyd video. So I don't know what took us so long, but I am really anxious to get into our list and see what you guys have. You guys want to talk a little bit about Pink Floyd before we get into our top 10s?
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah.
So I discovered Pink Floyd probably like most people in the late 70s, early 80s. I was just very young, but I remember hearing like Brick in the Wall on the radio. That was all over the place. When I was in even elementary school, kids were singing it. You know, We Don't Need No Education. But where there was 2 points in my life where I really dove into Pink Floyd. And one was like a holiday weekend where my local radio was doing like rock blocks or like double shots. It was something like where they were just playing like 4 or 5 songs by a band. And they started off with Brick in the Wall and then played Comfortably Numb and Run Like Hell. And I was like, Dad, who is this? And like, this is Pink Floyd. And at that point I knew like I had to really discover their music. And then in the early 90s, I was dating a girl and they came out with some Pink Floyd box set that had every single album. And she was a huge Pink Floyd fan. So she bought that because it was all digitally remastered. It was on CD. And she handed me a stack of Pink Floyd. And at that point, I had a complete Pink Floyd discography. And that's when I really discovered Syd Barrett and some of the other albums that weren't played on the radio. But I love the band. I think they're just amazing.
Was that the Shine On box set?
Yep, I think so. It had like like a swimmer or something on the front. Yeah, she got it. I reaped the benefit. So
I bet you did.
I did multiple
Wow.
Yeah, thanks for those.
Yeah, with me, I think I was kind of slower catching on to Pink Floyd, to be honest with you. I do remember, like, I think my freshman dance, going to a dance or something, and they were playing another Brick in the Wall Part 2 over like these speakers, and it was in a gymnasium. It was like really loud. And I'm like, well, this is really cool. You know, I really like this because, you know, I had seen Pink Floyd album covers, but I think sometimes, you know, growing up, you know how you're kind of stupid for a while where you're only into the newer bands. And like, so like, you know, a Pink Floyd was kind of like how I used to feel about Led Zeppelin. I'd see the album covers. I'm like, well, you know, these are like old hippie bands or something. And I remember I had a cousin had the Animals album, and I'm like, so I keep seeing this name and, you know, what is this, Animals? And she's like, well, this is how she described it to me. It's like all these songs about animals, and they've got like a bunch of animal noises going throughout the album. And I'm like, oh, well, that just sounds horrible. You know, that sounds stupid. So, you know, I don't get into them, but I hear that song. And then while I'm still in high school, they make the movie of The Wall. And I go to the theater seeing that, not knowing these songs, you know, but yeah, I'm watching the movie and I'm like, wow, this is a fucked up movie. And it is really cool. And a lot of these songs are kind of neat, you know, and I just really got into the whole story of it. And then I got that, the first Pink Floyd music I bought was a collection of great dance songs, you know, which is a small compilation. And it had the song Wish You Were Here on that. And I don't know why I'd never heard that song before, you know, but I heard it on there, and, you know, I'm like, wow, man, this is like really serious stuff. And then the song One of These Days was on there, and I thought that was really badass. But it still took me a little while until I really got into them. I ended up buying a used copy of The Wall, which I still have to this day on vinyl. an old copy that somebody wanted to get rid of, then I just started getting more of it. And eventually, it got to be, to where I just fell in love with them. I've seen Roger Waters like 3 times. I've seen multiple Pink Floyd tribute bands. And I just think, pretty much there's Pink Floyd and then there's everybody else,
Yeah.
And Led Zeppelin's up there with them, but they're just great.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. My dad had Dark Side of the Moon, and he had The Wall, like when that came out. And so I remember more of The Wall than I do hearing Dark Side of the Moon. I mean, he probably played side 2 of Dark Side of the Moon, but I don't remember him playing side 1 all that much. And I just, I was like, that's dad music, when I was in high school. It's like, I don't want to be listening to the same stuff my dad listens to because it's not cool. So I was listening to stuff like the Smiths and the Cure and, stuff like that. And I'd kind of gone totally away from classic rock except for the Beatles. And then I was in it was like 2 weeks before graduation. I was in a record store at the mall. It's like Harmony House or one of those places like that. And they were playing Dark Side of the Moon on the system there in the record store, and Brain Damage, Eclipse, they were playing that song. And it was like I was listening to it for the first time. I'm sure I'd heard it before, but I went in there not knowing what I was going to buy. It was just, I had some money. So I walked in there not really sure what I was going to buy. And I'm like, you know what? That actually sounds really damn good. So I went and I bought the cassette of Dark Side of the Moon. And it was really, I never heard it before all the way through. And so it was like, wow, this is amazing. I mean, all the songs flow into each other. And there were songs I'd heard before, but I didn't realize were maybe Pink Floyd, like Us and Them, or I think I knew Time was Pink Floyd, but nonetheless, it was just like, I was blown away. And then I'm like, well, now I got to get The Wall. And then I got Momentary Lapse of Reason, because that was the new album that had just come out at the time. And then I just started working my way backwards from their catalog. But yeah, and I think, one of the things that always attracted me in a record store were their album covers, because their covers were so distinctive, and they had so much personality and character to the music. It was like a cow, just a cow on the album cover, or Guma, that album cover, or even Relics with that creepy looking bottle cap on the cover. It was like, if the music inside is anything as mysterious or intriguing as the album covers, this has got to be a great band. But yeah, I never looked back after hearing Dark Side of the Moon, and then discovering Wish You Were Here and Animals, and then going back to metal, and then from metal working my way back to stuff like Atom Heart Mother, and then more, and finally, like, oh, there's this guy Sid Barrett, and he was one of the founders, and Piper at the Gates of Dawn, which was recorded the same time Sgt. Pepper was being recorded. And it was just like, wow, I had no idea that Pink Floyd had such a rich history and different phases. And, from that point on, I've just been a diehard. I mean, Pink Floyd's definitely, I would say probably my 3rd favorite band after the Beatles and Rolling Stones. But any new release they come out with, I don't care if I've got 5 copies of it already. That's
I believe.
Yeah, I believe after that Beatles video.
Yeah, no kidding.
Yeah.
That was, I don't want to get into it, but that was hilarious.
Yeah. Well, let's get into our top 10. And you want to start things off, Gary? We're going to start off with our number 10 through number 6. First of all.
So number 10 is off of an album that I know, I hear a lot of people really hate, really shit on a lot. But this is off of the Final Cut from 1983, the last one with Roger Waters. It's the Fletcher Memorial Home. I love that song. I love the premise of it. It's Roger Waters just being very vicious, like he can be, basically talking about Brezhnev, Thatcher, Reagan, the world leaders at that time, and let's just put them all in this home for old people to where they can't do any harm to anybody. That's basically what that is about. Talks about, well, we'll put you on closed circuit TV so you can watch yourselves because that's what's real to you. He's basically saying they don't give a shit about people. All they care about is their power. He even calls them, tyrants and kings in the song. It's just wonderfully mean-spirited as the way he can be. And even, I can't think, what does it say there at the end?
Colonial wasters of life and limb.
Well, yeah, there's that. But like at the very end, when it's going out, he says, okay, you know how they always have the voices. Everybody in, everybody ready. He goes, time for the final solution, which, that's what Hitler called, what he was doing to the Jews. And so he's basically saying, you know what, let's just get rid of these world leaders. He kind of throws that line as it's fading out. So it's very, very vicious, but it kind of, that album is very, very stark. I realize it's not an easy listen because I know a lot of people, when they think of Pink Floyd, they just think of like, the pretty music and, getting high. That's what I thought when I was younger. It's just this stoner band where people go, oh yeah, man. But it's not. Pink Floyd's so much more than just that. And that song is a testimony to it. Anyway, next one, Astronomy Domini. I guess I'm not even sure if that's how you pronounce it. That's how I've always pronounced it. But now we're in the Syd Barrett era. That's off of the Piper at the Gates of Dawn. I just like that song. It's very trippy. It's kind of nonsensical. It's about space, I guess. But I like the part where it goes, ooh, ooh. It's just very weird. It just sounds like a sci-fi movie. And it's just very cool. It's got Sid and Richard Wright, I think, are both singing together on that song. And it's just a neat harmonizing way they do that. And I just think it's a cool sounding song. Sid is only at the beginning of Pink Floyd, but he has an effect, years down the road, as I'm sure you will see as we go on to our list. Number 8, Goodbye Blue Sky, off of The Wall, from the very beginning of, look, mommy, there's an airplane up in the sky. And, you got this nice acoustic guitar, but then it starts changing the chords there, and you got that synthesizer coming in. And then it becomes ominous. And it's just kind of, it's one of those great songs of matching the music with the lyrics. The whole thing, Goodbye Blue Sky. You have like, the innocence being a child, but you're leaving it behind. You're thinking of the good things of being a child, but you're also thinking of the bad things. That song, obviously, I assume anybody watching this is familiar with themes of The Wall, but the character Pink had issues when he was a child, with his mother, with his father being gone and all this stuff. So he's, there's part of it, he's kind of like saying, okay, I can put my childhood behind me and carry on with my life, but he never fully can. It always haunts him throughout, until the very end of the album.
Well, I think like anybody who loses, like Roger Waters did, his dad was Eric Fletcher Waters, which is where the name Fletcher Memorial Home comes from. But anybody who loses anybody who loses a parent that young, I think it forces you to grow up, especially, when they die in a war like that. And he never knew his father because he was so young. And I think what you see at the beginning of the movie where he's going through all those artifacts and relics, his father's old uniform. I mean, that's straight out of Roger Waters' you know, that was his life story. That part of it was very much autobiographical. But, you know, I think that song is sort of like, you know, you're a child, but then all of a sudden the realities of war and the casualties force you to grow up, and you're not a child anymore. You lose that innocence. So yeah, that's a great song, great part in that movie. But you know, and I think The Wall was very personal for Roger Waters, because I think he was talking, when he was writing the lyrics, he was talking about Syd Barrett in certain songs. He was talking about his dad. Obviously, he wrote a song about mothers, and he said, well, it's not necessarily about my mom, but there's a lot of mothers who are this way, who become overprotective. So even though it's kind of got somewhat of a universal theme, people can relate to it on different levels. You know, I think for him, it was a very personal work.
Yeah, and I think a lot of his work does exactly what you just said. He might be thinking of a particular theme or something personal, but you know, like he has said about "Wish You Were Here," people misinterpret that. And he said, but that's okay. You know, he's like, if that's how they view it, he goes, that makes sense to me too. He goes, I can see how people view it that way. And you know, I think great songs do that to an extent. I don't necessarily want a song to hit me over the head to tell me exactly, you know, unless I'm listening to like Quiet Riot or something, you know. But if it's music like this that, you know, has personal type lyrics or whatever, if they can make it somehow to where it can mean something to you and something to you guys, maybe slightly different, there's nothing wrong with that, you know, unless you totally misinterpret it, like Every Breath You Take by the Police. But anyway, number 7 off of the Division Bell, I picked High Hopes. I think this particular song is probably the best that David Gilmour and his wife Polly co-wrote together. As far as the music is fantastic. I think lyrically it's very well done. It's worthy of the Pink Floyd name, and just the fact, you know, it's basically also kind of a little bit like Goodbye Blue Skies to an extent. I think, you know, it's talking about childhood and you know, not necessarily just childhood, but your youth and the different things that happen, you know, to start to divide you up or whatnot. But it's kind of remembering, you know, the grass was greener, you know, all that kind of stuff, how you remember your youth before you became more jaded and more worldly. And then just that magnificent, you know, pedal slides guitar solo that David Gilmour does on the coda of that song that just builds. And you're like, I don't know how long this has been going on, but it can keep going because I'm totally digging it. And, you know, I think as far as the post Roger Waters stuff, this is definitely one of the big highlights in my mind, at least. And we're going to number 6.
Yep.
Right. Yeah. Number 6. So here we go. No surprise. I picked Time. It's one of those songs where I'm like, well, this is so obvious, but you know, it's a great song. Now, the first time I heard this, when I started working, like when I was a sophomore at a grocery store, and this guy that was like a bit older, you know, he comes up. I'm throwing a football in the street with my buddies, and he comes up, pulls up in his car. He sees me, and he's got a 12-pack of beer there beside him, and he's like, "You ever listen to Pink Floyd?" And I'm like, "Yeah, well, you know, not very much." And he plays Time, and he's like, you know, he's a little buzzed, and he's saying, "Yeah, you know, it's all about how time just slips away and gets past you and everything." And I'm like, wow, you know, that's pretty heavy. And then I realized, you know, later on, yeah, I mean, he's right. I mean, that's what the song is. You know, it's just talking about how you're a kid, you're a little kid. Next thing you know, boom, you're getting older. And that line, you know, the line they have in there, you missed the starting gun, because you feel that way sometimes. You're like, holy shit, I just missed 10 years of my life. How did I get here? You know, how did I get here with, you know, I was just a kid. Now I have kids. Now my kids are grown. Now I have a grandkid, and it's just crazy. And there's also like, you think sometimes, you have these, not everybody, but I think most people have these things where you're like, is this, the job I have, is this really what I wanted to do? This isn't what I thought I was going to do with my life. Is this where I want to be? Holy shit, look how old I am now. I think that song is kind of like that. And it just basically talks about, next thing you know, you're dead. And so, it's kind of sad. And they got that, because it's Roger Waters, he has to take a shot at religion. So at the very end of the song, far away across the field, the tolling of the iron bell calls the faithful to their knees to hear the softly spoken magic spells. That's kind of, you just take that however you want to take it. But it's, and the whole thing of all the bells, the clocks going off at the beginning. And then when they have that boom, then they got the rototoms. Boom. Just amazing, to crank that son of a bitch up and to hear that song and the guitar solo in it. Holy cow. It's just perfect. It's just one of those perfect Pink Floyd songs, man.
Can't agree more. That's the closest thing to a Nick Mason drum solo I think that we ever got on those songs at the beginning, but it's so powerful. And it's a funny song. You want everyone to scare the shit out of your kids or anyone's kids, bring them into a room and just kind of have it the volume very low and then crank it right before all those clocks start chiming, I've done it. And it's hilarious.
I've done it to my kids.
I've never filmed it, but I may have to one of these days. But yeah, I love everything about that. And it's just the music suits perfectly. I love that beginning, the intro. You could almost devote an entire episode just to that intro because you've got that dun, and then you got Nick Mason, boom, ba-dum, boom, ba-dum, bum, ba-bum, ba-dum, dun. It's sort of like, whoa, this is getting heavy now, But yeah, just a great track. And I always think about Dark Side of the Moon, and of course, it's so like, oh yeah, we know Dark Side of the Moon is great, but just for Pink Floyd, they put out like 6 or 7 studio albums up to that point, and none of them were terrible. None of them were like fantastic, blow your mind, but it's almost like, if the Lions were to win the Super Bowl next year, is like, well, where did that come from? It's sort of the same thing with Pink Floyd. Nobody saw Dark Side of the Moon coming. A fully realized concept album where you've got radio hits, you've got brilliant playing, you've got a concept that resonates with anybody who is alive. And they just knocked it out of the park. And yeah, I think is the most, if you know Pink Floyd's history, that's the most impressive thing to me is they'd been toiling around for a while, put out some pretty decent records up to that point. And then Dark Side of the Moon, one of the greatest albums ever. Like, where did that come from? Nobody saw that coming. Roger Waters had written some interesting lyrics for sure. David Gilmour had come up with some interesting guitar solos, and Richard Wright had come up with some interesting keyboard textures. Nick Mason was a decent drummer, but still, that they all came together and they put out what is an unqualified masterpiece. On any given day, my favorite album of all time is pretty remarkable.
Yeah.
And the great thing about it too is it carries on. This last Christmas, I was talking to both my sons. I say, hey, is there another, because they're both starting to get some vinyl. And I go, hey, is there a record? I asked them both individually, different times. Both of them said, well, I don't own Dark Side of the Moon, yet. And I'm like, all right. So, they're both in their 20s.
They should hand you Dark Side of the Moon at birth. Like, here you go. You're gonna...
Yeah, here's your copy.
Well, that's like saying, you know, you don't have a first aid kit in your home, or you don't have smoke detectors, or you don't have a spatula. It's like, how have you lived this long in your life and not had any of those things? What are you doing? I am running out immediately and buying you this because, you know, how are you living your life without Dark Side of the Moon in your collection? You know, that's like emergency, like drop what you're doing, get on Amazon or go to your corner record store and pick that album up. Do not let another day of your life go by without owning that album. That's how I feel anyway. But, you know, so good pickup. Good job, Gary.
All right. So my number 10 is off this album right here. And it's going to be One of These Days, which is the first track. I love it. It's like that gallop kind of, you know, I love Iron Maiden, obviously, you guys know. So I am automatically attracted to a gallop when I hear it, you know, and there's really no lyrics, right? There's like one lyric, cut you into pieces or something morbid like that. But it's a fantastic song and I absolutely love it. So that's my number 10. My number 9, and I'm
sorry, I don't want to interrupt, but I do want to say that's actually Nick Mason. So that one of these days I'm gonna cut you into little pieces. But in fact, I think there's some compilation cassettes or CDs you can buy. They actually call it One of These Days I'm gonna cut you into little pieces instead of just One of These Days. But
there is. I saw that once. Yeah, I can't remember what that was, but I do remember seeing it as a title like that. Yeah.
But that awesome. that galloping bass riff. I think they use that in Sheep also, sort of that.
Yeah, I'm gonna get to that. I wrote that down. Sheep is on my list. Spoiler alert. So next is Time, and you guys said everything I could possibly say. My notes say David Gilmour, what the fuck? Because that's how awesome he is on this song.
Yeah,
he is so fantastic. And you know, Gary, I also wrote down the line, no one told you when to run, you missed the starting gun. And I couldn't agree with you more. I was holding it all inside, like, oh my God, he's saying everything I wanted to say. It's a massive, like, I can't believe it's not number 1, but that just shows how many great Pink Floyd songs. I think the only reason it's not number 1 is because I play it so damn much.
Yeah.
It just puts you in a good mood. It's a fantastic song. I love it. Number 8 is a song that when I first heard, I didn't realize it was Pink Floyd. And it's off this album, and it's called Young Lust. And it's got that, I am just a newborn. And it's like, sounds like a blues song, like an Eric Clapton song or something. I want a dirty woman. I'm like, hell yeah. I was probably like 10, like, I want a dirty woman. Where do I find these ladies? And if you notice, I got a double hype here, you know, because I love the hype.
Is that a repress, Josh, or is that an original?
This is when the movie came out. So this was the repress they made to coincide with the movie.
Nice.
So yeah, wow. It sounds fantastic too. I love it. Yeah, I love that song. And that song will come on the radio on a Friday, and I'm like, I will drive around the block another time so I can hear the Young Lust.
It's got to be prefaced, you know, with empty spaces played before it. You know, the way it just goes right into that song is fantastic.
Oh, so good. Yeah, absolutely. Love it. And then my number 7 and my number 6 tie together. They're both off Animals, and I'll kind of talk about this album where the first time I heard this album, I really didn't understand it. It was the early 90s. And I had heard the other albums, all the big albums like The Wall and Dark Side, and it was just so dark. It was hard for me to like, and I was probably so optimistic. You know how you are when you're, you know, in your young 20s, you're like, the world is great, right? I hadn't been scorned yet. But, you know, in my 30s and 40s, I really discovered this album and I really fell in love with it. And 3 of the songs on this album are going to make my list. But number 7 is Sheep and number 6 is Pigs. I love both of those songs. Like you guys said, the gallop is kind of stolen and repurposed. You know, to me, I love this album as an entirety. Like I could have put the whole album on. To me, it's one big song. That's kind of how I listen to it. I never don't listen to it in its entirety. But I absolutely love both of those songs, and they could have, and any given day they could swap. I think that Pigs is a little bit more accessible than Sheep, especially with the the charade you are kind of chorus. It gets people, but I love both of them equally. But this is my favorite Pink Floyd album, which just shows I've kind of gotten probably darker as my life has gone. So yeah, that's my top 10. I mean, my 10 through 6.
It's kind of funny about Animals because you call that, oh, that's a dark Roger Waters album. It's like, well, that's kind of like saying, oh, Richard Pryor released a comedy album with a lot of profanity in it. It's like, well, yeah, all his albums have profanity in it. All Pink Floyd albums are dark, but that one's darker. That one is really dark.
I think I think the first time you hear Animals, especially depending on your age, it's a hard listen, right. Just the way that album sounds and everything. And then later on, you appreciate it so much, and you hear everything that's going on in there. It's just, that's the one that, I just totally love now. And I can't say that the very first time I heard it, I was like, oh my God, this is great. Because it has definitely a different sound than any of the Pink Floyd albums.
It very definitely harsh. And like I'm going to talk about Dogs later, but it's almost like when you first hear Dogs, it's got like I'm like, am I listening to Sweeney Todd or something? Like the first time I heard it, I was so taken aback because it didn't sound necessarily like a rock song right away. Like I grew up in a house where my father loved all the genres of music, including like, musicals, and so it was like, I would hear it and I'd be like, for some reason it sounded like out of place to me. It didn't sound, but then I got it. I got the brilliance of it. I got the way he was singing, the cadence of his voice, all of that was done so purposely on that album. Yeah. All right, Jeff.
Even, Pigs on the Wing, which is essentially a love song from Roger Waters to his wife then. I mean, the opening lyric on it is, if you didn't care what happened to me, it's like, oh, well, that's a uplifting start to a love song. But I know he recorded that because, especially for that album, because if you had Dogs straight into Pigs, straight into Sheep, it's like, God, what a downer this whole album is. So I think he wanted that track to bookend the album, just so the album didn't start off on a downer and kind of end on a downer. It was sort of, he wanted to introduce some hope into the whole theme of the album. But yeah, I mean, I agree. There's just something darker about Dogs. There's something more sinister about Sheep than other songs in Pink Floyd's discography. But it all flows well together. Yeah. And I think it's kind of the last true group effort where everybody gets an opportunity to shine. Before you got The Wall, where it's strictly a Roger Waters, David Gilmour show, and you kind of got Nick Mason and Richard Wright kind of pushed to the outside a little bit. But yeah, Animals is not an easy listen at first, but I know a lot of people who consider it their favorite Pink Floyd album, and with good reason. But interesting too that it came out in 1977, right when you had the whole punk rock movement. You had the Sex Pistols and the Ramones and all these bands that were kind of going back to, rock and roll's rebellious roots. And then you got Pink Floyd coming out with a 5-song album with, 2 songs that clock in over 7 minutes. But
lyrically, that album is more punk than anything the Sex Pistols or the Ramones or any of those bands, even the Clash almost, had done. Because, I'm like Josh. I've got another song in there too. So I'll show.
All right.
I haven't even gotten to mine. I feel like I've done
know.
most of the talking, and I'm like, I haven't even given my bottom 5. Jeez. All right. Well, I'll make this kind of quick anyway. My number 10 is going to be off Pink Floyd's second album, Saucer Full of Secrets. I'm going to go with Set the Controls for the Heart of the Sun. Just almost kind of an ambient hypnotic track. You've got that bass riff going throughout the song. You've got Rick Wright coming up with some of those creepy keyboard flourishes, and it's kind of spacey, but at the same time, it's a little bit, I don't know, unsettling, I guess is maybe a good word to use for that. But I just love it. I guess there's kind of a chorus, but it's just a repetitive riff throughout the entire song. You got that little bit where it goes, that's about the only real detour that it takes from that song. But yeah, I first heard it off the Works album, which was a compilation album that came out, I think, in like the early 80s or whatever. That was the first time I ever heard it. And then, I realized it was off Saucer Full of Secrets, but love that one. Number 9, I am also going to go to the metal album for Fearless, which is also, ironically, also on the Works compilation. But it's interesting because they segue it right into Brain Damage on that album. As it fades out, Brain Damage fades in. So it's an interesting kind of a crossfade that they do there. But anyway, just the song in general, I just love that easy, breezy. It's like one of the lightest compositions in Pink Floyd's early catalog. It's just got that opening guitar song, and then you got the acoustic guitar and the rhythm guitar. And it's just sort of like, lay back in a hammock and listen to Fearless with your lemonade or whatever, Yeah, it's just so chill. And I love David Gilmour's vocal. And it's interesting too, because David Gilmour's vocal underwent a transformation between Metal and Obscured by Clouds and Dark Side of the Moon, because it's almost like on a song like A Pillow of Winds or Fearless, he's just trying to sound so, and then, right into the beginning of Breathe, it's like his tone is completely different. It's a little bit sexier. It's a little bit more mature. It's a little bit cooler, more of a rock voice. You know what I'm talking about? It's sort of like up to that point, David Gilmour was just trying to sound really mellow. Yeah, whatever. Nothing wrong with it, but I think he definitely matured his vocal style in the space of, 1 or 2 albums. So anyway, Fearless, I love that. I love at the end how one of their first kind of forays into audio verite, where you've got the soccer chants going back and forth, or they're singing You'll Never Walk Alone. They're kind of chanting that at a soccer stadium. And then you've got kind of them doing whatever their football cheers are at the end of that track. I always thought was kind of a cool way to end that song.
I think that's, to me, for whatever reason, when that comes on like that, I think it sounds creepy. There's some kind of weird quality to that, because the way it ends that song, I'm like, man, that is weird how that does. I still think it sounds odd, kind of just a weird, creepy feel to it.
Yeah, because I feel like they're treating it with something like with some more echo or reverb or something they've done to manipulate it so it does sound that way. It sounds a little unnerving, but yeah, great ending, great track, great album. My number 8, I'm going with the first track, the leadoff track on the More soundtrack, Cirrus Minor, which it's just a dreamy, very chill track. You got Rick Wright playing some church organ music that sounds a bit creepy. You've got David Gilmour with almost a disembodied kind of a vocal. And it's a Rick Wright. There's very little instrumentation other than Rick Wright and this track, but it's just a very moody piece. And I think More is a really underrated album. I don't hear people talk about that nearly enough, but I love that opening track on there. Number 7, I'm going with Hey You off of The Wall, which doesn't appear in the movie, strangely. But yeah, it's there's something, and I'm going to use this word a lot, unsettling about even the guitar. I don't know how they tuned that acoustic guitar, but right from the get-go, it's just sounds ominous. That guitar opening, guitar strumming that David Gilmour does, and then his vocal and that middle part, that that part is just like, ooh. And I love the fact that you've got David Gilmour and Roger Waters sharing vocals like they do on some of the tracks. Well, it was only fantasy. I love Roger Waters sticking his little bit in there. And the worms ate into his brain. Yeah. And then there's that, just, even the bass, it's sort of, there's that little break before Roger Waters takes the final verse, kind of like he does on Not Now, John, where you've had David Gilmour up until the last verse. And then Roger Waters is like elbowing him out of the way, like, I'll take it, David. This needs a little more drama at the end. Like, I got to totally get theatrical with the last verse. And so he takes it, and I just think it's beautiful. And I think that track just perfectly illustrates how David Gilmour and Roger Waters complemented each other. And they were such a great match. It's unfortunate their personalities and egos had to clash, but I think together they were brilliant. And I think that's one of my favorite collaborations that they did. And then my number 6, I am going to go with the title track off of Wish You Were Here, the song Wish You Were Here, which was a poem that Roger Waters had among some scraps of lyrics and other things. And David Gilmour saw this and he's like, I can put some music to that. And so he came up with the melody to it. Again, another, like I say, David Gilmour, Roger Waters, perfect collaboration. But yeah, just a great song. And it says so much in like it's 4 minutes. It's like polar opposite. So you think you can tell Heaven from Hell, Blue Sky from Pain. One of the more, I don't know, there's just so many great lyrics in that song. Did you exchange a walk-on part in the war for a lead role in a cage? Lyrics like that are so profound, and it's just one of many great lyrics in that song. And it really sums up the theme of that whole album, which is the absence of presence. You're here, but you're not here. Like Welcome to the Machine, the cold industrial, technology, and how the dehumanizing influence of technology, and Have a Cigar, where somebody's trying to sweet talk a band and give them the spiel, like I'm sure many bands have heard. But I'm not here to talk about that song. I'm not here to talk about that album. Stop me. Sorry. You can have the microphone, Gary. I've had it long enough.
No, I love hearing people talk about Pink Floyd.
All right. 5 through 2 right. Now.
5 through 2. Okay, number 5. Going back to The Wall for the song Nobody Home. This is a very quiet song, but it has dramatic parts in it. And just the whole idea, it's just different things mixed together. We talked about Roger Waters' lyrics and how a lot of times, they're personal lyrics, but he manages to take pieces of other things that he sees and throw them into his songs. Like that particular song, you've got some Syd Barrett references in there, where he talks about elastic bands to keep his shoes up. That was directly from what he saw of Syd Barrett, who just gave up, having shoes that had laces on them or anything because it was too much for him. The obligatory Hendrix perm, he said that's something that, Syd Barrett had back in the day that, everybody was doing. Is it the Go Hill boots or something? I think he uses that term in there. He's talking about that. The nicotine stains on the fingers of letting a cigarette burn all the way up to his finger. That's things he saw from Syd Barrett, but he's just taking those and turning it into, the rest of it is his own story to an extent. That actually, the whole thing of calling home to call your wife while you're out on the road and, oh, what? Some dude just answered the phone. What the?
Yeah.
That happened to him, but then he's also got things that, I think he's referencing, and I don't know this, but like Richard Wright also had a cocaine issue by the time they were doing The Wall, which is part of the reason why he wasn't doing anything. He wasn't contributing. And Roger Waters basically said, get the hell out. Prop up my mortal remains on the grand piano. Is that a shot at Richard Wright? I don't know for sure, but it sounds like it. Carrying around a silver spoon on a chain, all that kind of stuff. But just the referencing in that song, just more fantastic lyrics. I've got wild staring eyes. I've got a strong urge to fly, but I've got nowhere to fly to. To me, that lyric is like, you could take out a couple ways. You've got the fact that he references something like that before when he's talking about his mom. She might let you sing and it might let you do it, but it won't let you fly, that kind of thing, the smothering mom. Or you could take it as just being, that, have you ever had that feeling where you really feel like you've got something to do, something to prove, something you want to do in this world, but I just don't know what it is. I just don't have that dream. How like some people, they've got a dream and they see it all the way through, they realize it. And you have that feeling, I want to have that, but I just don't know what it is. To me, that's how I see that line in that song. I'll go on to the next song because I'm taking too long. I'm sorry, you shouldn't have picked Pink Floyd. My number 4, this has been talked about, the brain damage, or maybe I think we talked about it, brain damage and Eclipse. I'm picking, that's one song to me. And there's some more Syd Barrett references in that song. If the band you're in starts playing different tunes, I'll see you on the dark side of the moon. That line would be, that's what Syd Barrett started doing at time, before he was out of the band would be playing, he'd just start playing a different song. But, he's also, Roger Waters is also saying, I'll see you on the dark side of the moon, saying, I've got my own issues too, Syd. I'll see you over there. He's not just saying it's him. He's saying, yeah, I've got some screwed up things going on too. So that's a fantastic song. Number 3, Josh was already talking about this. Sheep. Sheep from, I thought, okay, I'm just going to pick one song from Animals. I could have been like you, Josh, and, well, I don't know, eeny, meeny, mighty, mo. But I went with Sheep. I just think that's a fantastic song all the way through. I love that middle section, where it goes, it just gets real creepy. And the lyrics in that song, very wordy. It's a very wordy song. And, you have to get out the lyric sheet because you can't always tell what the hell he's talking about. And he's mixing in biblical passages and perverting them into different lyrics throughout that song. And then the whole song, sheep, he takes the whole concept. Animals is kind of loosely based on, George L. Orwell's Animal Farm, except instead of talking about communism or Stalinism, he's talking about capitalism and the different references of different classes of people in life, and sheep would be us.
Right.
Basically, we're the sheep in this. Well, I don't know. Josh might be a dog or a pig. I'm not sure. But anyway, at the same time, the sheep rise up at the end, and they kill their, the dogs, the pigs. What happens from there, I don't know.
Right.
I mean, I think Roger Waters saw something at the time, because England was a little bit different than the United States at that time, and it was very contentious of what might happen to that country at the time between the working class and the elite. It was a very formidable situation going on there. So he was kind of talking about that. Are they going to come up with, is there going to be a revolution? I think that's what that song was referencing. Number 2 is Shine On You Crazy Diamond. That to me is probably one of the best songs that manages to take some of that element of early Pink Floyd and then later era Pink Floyd and just mix it together perfectly, because it's got that super long, super great intro. You just have that keyboard going, for the longest time, and then that gets, David Gilmour, and it just comes in with just a few notes. David Gilmour, no guitarist is better of doing more with less. That song is a perfect example. And the lyrics, it's great. Remember when you were young, you shone like the sun, shine on you crazy. This song obviously is about Sid and his relationship. They still had a bit of a relationship at this point, and that song is definitely referencing him. A lot of people think other songs are, but that one is for sure.
Well,
and
it's got it's got his name and the title, Shine On You Crazy Diamond, Sid. So sort of like Lucy in the Sky with Diamonds, the whole, is it an anagram or not anagram, but are they taking, but anyway, I'll shut up.
It's great. It's got it's got a little bit of time changes going on in there too. Got a great saxophone solo, the guitar work, the vocals, everything about that song. I love it. It's long, but they liked it so much they turned it into 2 songs and had it on both sides of the album.
Well, and the interesting thing in the story they tell is they were recording that album and they're there in the studio mixing or listening to a playback for one of the songs, maybe that one, and this bald overweight guy wanders into the studio and they're like, who is that? What's he doing here? Is he an engineer? Is he a record executive? Who's this guy? Or is he just some freak off the street who wandered in? And they keep looking at him, and then they realize it's Sid Barrett. He had shown up and was like, hey guys, can I play on the record? And they're like, holy shit, what happened to him? Because they hadn't seen him for a while, because he basically was a recluse. He had gone to live with his family and had isolated himself, had not recorded any music in a while. And they're like, holy shit, that's Sid Barrett. And for Roger Waters, it was particularly emotional. He was saying, he was like crying afterwards, because seeing, this person that he had looked up to, who had at one time been a brilliant musician, just kind of reduced to, this overweight, balding, somewhat incoherent person, was really upsetting to them, but interesting.
Yeah, like I mentioned earlier on, his presence is still felt. The amazing thing about Pink Floyd too, when you think about it, is so they started out, this kind of psychedelic band, and Sid Barrett was their leader, and then he goes off the rails, he's gone, and they continue on and become one of the biggest bands of all time. It's an amazing story all the way around.
Yeah.
What you got, Josh?
All right. So my number 5 is one that you mentioned, and that is Brain Damage / Eclipse. Since you spoke eloquently about it, I'll tell you that the first time I heard it is when I really realized that I loved this band, because I don't knew only the radio hits. And then, I stole my father's album. And by the time that was over and I heard those last 2 songs, I was obsessed. It's just a fantastic song, and I can't say anything that you guys haven't already said about it. The next one I talked about slightly, and that's Dogs, and I can really probably speak more eloquently about why Dogs is my favorite on this album. And it really starts at like the 4-minute mark. At the 4-minute mark, Gilmore kicks in, and it's got this awesome, just Gilmore being Gilmore, like you said, less is more, but it's so beautiful, and it's building, and then it drops. And when it drops, there's like an acoustic guitar, and then it starts to pick up, and you start hearing the bass, and it's like picking up, and the rhythm's picking up, and then you hear them say, I wrote it down because I forgot, and when you lose control, you'll reap the harvest that you sow. And it's like so powerful the way it's said and sung. And I think that when I revisited this album in my 30s, that really resonated with me, that one line. It was like, I couldn't wait to hear the song again, to play the album again. And then towards the end of the song, Gilmore kicks in again with the same type of guitar riff that he did at the 4-minute mark. I think that's around the 14-minute mark or something. That's how long this song is. But it brings back that emotion that I had, and then you think they're going to reprise that and maybe say that same line, but they don't. But that's the brilliance of Pink Floyd. It wasn't, nothing about it was commercial. It's just a masterpiece, and I absolutely love it. So Dogs, one of my favorites.
That's kind of, that's some of David Gilmour's fiercest guitar soloing is on that song.
Yeah. Oh yeah, it's so good. Absolutely love it. And then Gary mentioned this one, Wish You Were Here. Just such a beautiful song. Some of the best lyrics. That lyric, when I was a kid, when I heard that lyric of the walk-on part in the war for lead role in The Cage, I would think about my father telling me how he went to Vietnam and some of his high school friends went to Canada or to escape jail. And so to me, I always resonated that with that line. And my father told me like, oh, like, was he talking about that? Which he wasn't at all. But to me, it just shows the greatness of the lyrics, is that I'm thinking to myself, this person could have gone to war and maybe survived, or maybe never seen any battle, but instead they went to jail. But it's just the greatness of the lyrics that as a child, that's what resonated with me.
That's interesting.
Great song. And then lastly, number 2 is Shine On You Crazy Diamond, which I personally think is one of the most beautiful songs ever written. Can't believe it's not my number 1. It's so long, and I wish it was longer. I wish I'd take both songs and bring it together. You know what I mean? I just absolutely love it. The intro can't be long enough. I played it for my fiance, and she was like, "Are they going to start singing?" I'm like, "This is the best part." like, let me enjoy this. This is my favorite part.
That is hilarious, because we, I think I told you guys this before, but we still joke about that at my house when somebody will mention Pink Floyd, because when the boys were teenagers and we were driving in the car, and I had that song playing, and it's going along. Nobody's saying anything, the guitar is coming in and everything. And all of a sudden, out of the blue, my wife goes, "Oh my God, are they ever going to start singing?" So I busted out laughing. And, my kids will still do that today. I was like, "Are they ever going to start singing?" Like that. She can laugh about it now, but it was so hilarious because, and I get it, most women aren't into that kind of thing. And it is long, it's slow, but like you said, Josh, I love every minute of it.
Yeah.
That beginning of that song.
Yeah, I can't get enough of it. And it's, it could be instrumental, and I'd love it just as much. It's just so great.
Yeah.
All right, that's it. That's my number 2.
Well, that was my experience because to that point, when I was getting into Pink Floyd, I'd bought Dark Side of the Moon, I'd gotten The Wall, I'd gotten Momentary Lapse of Reason, and this friend of mine who was into Pink Floyd, he's like, you got to get Wish You Were Here. Wish You Were Here is the best album. So I'm like, all right, but I had a short attention span back then. I'm not used to, 9 or 10 minute songs. And so I'm putting it on and I'm like, what the fuck is this? Like, seriously, I'm like hoping for another Dark Side of the Moon. Like he said, it's great, right? And I'm like, Jesus, this is the most boring song ever. What the hell? How long is this going to go on? How many parts is it? It's 5 parts at the beginning. What the hell? I just didn't have the patience for it. And I was like, this album sucks. It's boring. But then you sit with it and you give it a chance, and its beauties unfold before you, just like the opening, the wine glasses, that it's very soft and it just kind of builds. And then you've got Rick Wright starting to play the wah, 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 on his keyboard. And then David Gilmour. And then like the 4 most beautiful chords ever put together. And I think that was actually the whole impetus of the song, is David Gilmour was just kind of playing around on his guitar, and Roger Waters heard him play those 4 chords. And he's like, wait a minute, hold that thought right there. That is brilliant. It just sounded, he said, almost like something cinematic, like something you'd hear in an old Western. And they kind of built the song around just those 4 simple notes that he played. But there's just such a profound sense of melancholy about that whole track. And I want to play it at my funeral, I mean, damn, it's just such a great tribute to Syd Barrett. And like you say,
that is crazy, because I had said that too. Yeah. That at my funeral, I want that song played.
Awesome.
For one thing, I think it'll drive some people nuts.
When are they going to start singing?
I just think it's great. And, I just love the fact that, the way they go, shine on, you crazy diamond.
Yeah.
So great.
Well, I even love the live version on Pulse without Roger Waters on it. It's still fantastic. It's just a great song.
Oh yeah, I like that version. What is it? That I think it's David Gilmour, one of his live albums that he put out, and he does this like real kind of stripped back, like when he does the verses, it's just real soft, and even that sounds pretty cool, really. Like it's just a different take on it, and I like it.
Yeah, and I like, I'm referring to parts. I think when we're talking about Shine on You Crazy Diamond, we're referring to parts 1 through 5, but I think parts 6 through 9, there's parts of that even that I think are pretty cool. I don't know, they're sort of like that. Let's get funky. You're like, oh yeah. Got my platform pimp heels on now, and we're going to town and all that. I don't know. It's sort of, they get a little funky, and they, sort of like the different styles. And then at the very end, the whole Rick Wright kind of, the keyboard, like the very end, it's sort of, I don't know. I like that it's just not a, let's revisit all of the musical themes of parts 1 through 5. I mean, they mix it up, and I think it's cool. I used to like roll my eyes, again, first time I heard it, I'm like, oh my God, really? But like now I love it. I mean, there's versions of it you can find on the internet where it's just straight 1 through 9, it doesn't like go into the rest of the album. It's kind of interesting to hear all 9 parts in succession like that. But anyway, all right, where are we at? Number 5, I'm going with Time off of, I may as well show it. I pulled it out, but Dark Side of the Moon. We already talked about it, but great track. So I'm not gonna talk any more about it because we've already did that. Number 4, Shine on You Crazy Diamond, parts 1 through 5. Already talked about that. Number 3, Dogs off of Aminals. Great record. Already talked about Dogs. But that's another one, you know, it's funny because that's another one where Roger Waters takes the last verse, you know, David Gilmour sings it all the way. And I'm sure David Gilmour at that point, it's like, for Christ's sake, can I at least finish the song? You know, it's sort of like, you're playing a football game, like the quarterback plays the first 3 quarters and then, you know, the backup kind of like steps in and takes over. It's like, I just want to play a complete game, or a pitcher. It's like, God, I got through 7 innings. Can't I just get a complete game in? You know, but it's sort of like how I'm sure David Gilmour felt. Like, for crying out loud, I was good enough to sing the first 3 verses. You won't let me sing the last verse of a goddamn song. Roger Waters. Number 2, a song I'm surprised nobody's talked about yet, but it's back to metal, Echoes. Love Echoes, and since we haven't talked about it, so many things I can say about that song. Number 1, I love the harmonies between David Gilmour and Richard Wright. I think their harmonies, I wish they had used that more. I think the last time they actually harmonized together was probably on Time from Dark Side of the Moon, and then for whatever reason they never harmonized again, at least not that I can recall. But I think their voices complement each other so well, so I love that. I love the version that they do in the Live at Pompeii concert, as it were, or movie, whatever you want to call it. I think that's great. But that song, it takes you on a journey. You know, you've got the opening, ping.
Yeah.
You know, you want to talk about when are they going to fucking start the song? When are they going to start singing? I mean, that's like a great, you know, example of, for crying out loud, you know. But, and then like that middle section where you've got all those undersea, I used to listen to that, like as I was kind of falling asleep, I'd have like my little radio or whatever by my bed, and I'd put that on just to drift off, because it's just a great extended song. And like that middle section where it sounds like the creature from the Black Lagoon or some underwater creatures or whatever, it just, there's no music at all. It's all these like weird sounds kind of in the middle of it. It's, I don't know what to make of it, but I think it's great. I think all of it really just flows together. And yeah, I don't know, there's so many. I think it was called, the original title of it was Son of Nothing or something like that, and then they just kept adding parts onto it and adding pieces to it. But I think that's the first time they actually got it right, trying to record an entire side-long track for an album. I mean, they tried it with Adam Hart Mother, but that kind of hit or miss. The band was never happy with it. I think it's close, but no cigar. But I think Echoes is finally where it gelled. Like, yeah, that's a perfect 30-minute or however long. I know it's, I mean, at least 25 minutes long. But it takes you on a journey, and it starts here and you're winding your way all the way around. They go different places. It's heavy, and then it's light, and then you've got all these weird noises and stuff, and you feel like you're underwater. I mean, you get that sense that you're in a submarine or you're scuba diving or something. And it's just a great atmospheric track. So that's my number 2.
It's crazy too how it goes on forever, and then they come back in singing again. Mm-hmm. You know, you think it's going to just be instrumental for the rest of it, and then you're like, oh wait, they're not done. You know?
Yeah.
It's got like 17 endings. So I'm just going to say that. It's so fantastic though. Yeah, it just keeps changing, like you said.
Yeah.
Yeah. All right, number 1s.
Number 1. I'm going back to the wall for Comfortably Numb. To me, you know, this is up there with the the Stairway to Heavens, whatever, Smoke on the Water, all the Hotel California, greatest songs of all time type thing, whatever you want to call those songs. But this is up there. You mentioned earlier, Jeff, about Roger Waters and David Gilmour working together. This is a perfect example, I think. And they both sing on it. The parts that they sing, it's perfect. The way they separate it are like two different characters in the song. The amazing thing is, to me, about that song too, is one of the amazing things. That song, Roger Waters already had a shell of that song done. David Gilmour comes in, with the ding 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 ding, that part of it and everything. And then I think the ending where it changes so he gets solo. But he comes in with that. And Roger Waters is kind of like, I've already got this song. And Bob Ezrin says, yeah, but it needs something else. We need more to it. What about this thing David Gilmour did? Can you put, why don't we add that to the song? Go, they tell him, go write some lyrics for it. And, of course, he's Roger Waters. He's pissed. He goes home, comes back the next freaking day and has those lyrics.
Yeah.
To me, it's like, how does somebody do that? Who, already had this, most of the song written, and then he hears this other part and goes home, adds this that makes this song. And, that song captures just different moods of that album and throws it in there. And it's so fantastic that even though it's a concept album, the song totally stands on its own. The idea, when I was a child, I caught a fleeting glimpse out of the corner of my eye. I turned to look, but it was gone. I cannot put my finger on it now. Just the whole thing of the dream has grown, the child has grown, the dream is gone. I had become comfortably numb. It's easy to just look at the part of, oh, well, that's a doctor injecting him so he can go on stage, numbing him up and everything. But it's, that's just the surface of the song. There's so much going on in that song. The line where says, this is not how I am. He says in that's anybody who has gone through a point, in their life where maybe they're kind of living their life differently than what they, maybe they're adding a lot of alcohol to it. Maybe they're adding drugs to it. And, you're with people who really aren't people who should be your friends. You're not that person right now that you were a few years ago when you were younger, how you thought you were. You've become somebody else and you don't really like this person now. That is what that line says to me. It's just a perfect song. The guitar solo that closes it out. My God, who doesn't love that guitar solo? I mean, I have seen tribute bands where they do that guitar solo and everybody just loses their mind. It's not Pink Floyd playing it. When you go see Roger Waters, he's got somebody else playing guitar, but everybody still loves it. It's just amazing. People love that song. I love that song. It speaks to people in different ways. And it's just a perfect song. And it's the best song on that album. It's one of the greatest songs of all time.
It's also my number one.
Hey,
and you're absolutely right. When I try to compare it to something, I think of like Day in the Life. I think of Stairway to Heaven. I think of these songs they transcend everything, right? They're more than a generational song, right? Like you could say, well, this song is a generational song. Kids of the 70s love it. But Comfortably Numb is a song that I think resonates with most generations and is probably, to me, Pink Floyd's crowning masterpiece. And what makes it a masterpiece is the marriage of all the components and the way Roger and David work so well together. And you telling that story about how, it wasn't originally that way, right? It was like, him being pissed that Gilmore's getting his way or getting his part put on that song is just fantastic. It makes it even so much better. But you're absolutely right. And I was going to mention the lyrics, but you already mentioned it. But, like I can't explain, you would not understand, right? It's like, who hasn't felt that way, right? And who hasn't felt the way of these lyrics? I mean, they're powerful. They were powerful the first time I heard it. They're powerful today. When I had this on my list, it's funny because I had Echoes on my list. I had Comfortably Numb was probably like number 9. And over the last week, I've just listened to nothing but Pink Floyd over and over again. And I kept saying to myself, this truly is my favorite Pink Floyd song. How can I not put this number 1? It's a little cliche because it's such a big hit. But to me, it's everything. You know what I mean? It's like, it makes this album what it is. To me, Dark Side of the Moon and Wish You Were Here and Animals, every single song is perfect on it. There's not one song I would change anything. I do love this album, not a hater by the wall by any means, but if you did take Comfortably Numb off this album, it would affect it dramatically to me. And not because the other ones are good, it's because it's the focal point, it's the center point to me. It brings everything together in this album. So I don't know if that makes any sense.
Yeah. I mean, I'm like you. I went back and forth, and Echoes was originally on my list. And I'm like, but man, it's just some of these other songs speak to me more.
Right.
And so I didn't put that there. And I had Set the Controls for Heart of the Sun on there too, because I love that song, man. That song puts me in a trance. But yeah. It's tough. It's tough making this list.
We should have been like Aaron and done 50.
I know. I wanted to keep it, look how long we went as it was.
Well, I'm feeling a little bit sheepish now that my number 1 is not Comfortably Numb, and that I didn't even have Comfortably Numb on my list. But I think it was more like I wouldn't have Stairway to Heaven on my Led Zeppelin top 10 list either. I love Stairway to Heaven. I love Comfortably Numb, but I just feel like because it's been overplayed, if they ever play one Pink Floyd song on the radio, it's going to be Comfortably Numb. And so I think it was just the overfamiliarity of it. But yeah, I love it. It's a brilliant song. It is unquestionably one of the greatest tracks Pink Floyd ever recorded. However, my number 1 pick was the song that made me fall in love with Pink Floyd. And Josh, you had already spoken about this track. But it is a song, when I heard it, I wanted to buy the album. I wanted to take this album. I wanted to buy it a drink. I wanted to take it home with me, slowly peel off the cellophane and make sweet love to Dark Side of the Moon. But I'm talking about Brain Damage, Eclipse. And it was hearing that, like I said before, in that, record store that really made me fall in love with Pink Floyd. I'm like, this is the greatest fucking band ever. And it made me buy the album, and it made me fall in love with the album. Still today, I put it on, and I think it's just a brilliant piece of music. I think it's one of, if not the greatest Roger Waters vocals, because it's restrained. He's singing it well. I love David Gilmour's restrained guitar flourishes that he has. And if you watch the Live at Pompeii, it shows studio footage of them recording Dark Side of the Moon. And you've got David Gilmour there, and he's adding some guitar flourishes to Brain Damage. But it's like overdone, like he's adding too much to it. And that's how it could have sounded. He could have been totally like adding a bunch of guitar stuff to it. But I think it's a great exercise in restraint. He only adds enough to kind of complement the lyric to it. I love just the whole kind of spacey sound to it. And I love the segue right into Eclipse as well as it ends the album. I used to always think the song was called Dark Side of the Moon. I thought it was the title track. I didn't realize it had a different name. I didn't know it was called Brain Damage. I got the cassette. I'm like, well, where the fuck is Dark Side of the Moon? How's it not on this album? You know, is it like Houses of the Holy, where Houses of the Holy's on Physical Graffiti, or Waiting for the Sun, where that's on Morrison Hotel? You know, damn it, did I buy the wrong album? You know, but I love that song. And if I could only listen to one Pink Floyd song the rest of my life, I'd very happily have it be that one.
You know, it's kind of, I was thinking this when you said this earlier, Josh, and now you just basically said the same thing, Jeff. I think when then I got Dark Side of the Moon. You know, before that, the only album I had was The Wall. And when I got through that album and I heard those songs end it, when it was done, I was like, I'm a Pink Floyd fan.
Yeah.
You know, it's like, just like you said, it's like, I love this band now. You know, it's not just a one-hit wonder or one album type thing, because, you know, I just listened to this thing and it ended perfectly, you know, and it's like, this band is something. I'm going to get more stuff from them now.
Mm-hmm.
Absolutely. What a great band. What a great conversation, guys. Like,
Yeah,
doesn't get much better than this.
this is fun.
Well,
we miss you, Aaron and Chris.
Yeah.
But
Yeah, no question. And Chris as well. Chris is a big Pink Floyd fan, so I'm sorry he didn't get to kind of chime in and give his list as well. But yeah, I you know, I could talk about Pink Floyd for another hour. No surprise there. But I enjoyed your list, and I don't disagree with any of it. I think you guys all picked, and there's so much overlap too. I think we had, I mean, I know, I would say 8 of my songs you guys had on your list as well. There was a lot of, you know, consistency there.
The thing is, if we didn't have some overlap, I think it would be that some of us were lying.
Mm-hmm.
You know, some of the songs have to be on there.
Yeah. So anyway, thanks everybody for tuning in. And I'm not sure what we're going to do next week, but be great if you guys would join me. I think we had a good time. I think we worked well together. We should do this again.
I think so.
Yeah, I think so.
Yeah. All right, everybody. Take care.